Now I want to introduce our speaker for the day. I'm sure everybody knows Jonathan, but we appreciate him coming and speaking to us today. Jonathan is a published author. We all know him as a banker or as a financial advisor, and you have his bio in front of you. But Jonathan has worked on this book in previous years and published it recently, and I know that he's gotten a lot of good feedback on it. It's a lot of nice common sense things, and he uses his wit and his family heritage in there to bring amusement to the subject of financial security and raising your family and whatnot. And I want to thank Jonathan for coming today, and I'm going to let him take the podium and speak to you about CFO Dad.
Thanks, Angie. Appreciate that. I've known Angie for a long time, and it's a pleasure and honor to get to work with her at Mustard Seed. So I wanted to start with just kind of a little backstory on how I came to write a book. And, you know, I've always been fascinated with financial things. It's not too surprising. For those of you who know my family history, my family started People's Bank back in 1910. I grew up under the tutelage of my grandfather, Harold Fincher. Many of you knew him and the character that he was. And he was, some might say, frugal. That's probably an understatement about him, but it was always on his mind, and therefore it was always on my mind, because he would, you know, say a lot of things, sometimes appropriately, sometimes not so appropriately, talking about different topics. And but I've always been fascinated with financial things, and I went to college at SAU out here. Dr. David Ashby was one of my professors, and he rescued a marketing student from the flames of marketing and brought me over to the world of finance. And after I graduated, I went back and got all that I needed to sit for the CFP exam, did that, passed it when I was 23, I think. But I've always been fascinated with financial topics. You know, how money's made. I got to see a wide range of people growing up, from people that were very poor to people that were very wealthy. Certainly by small town standards, at least, maybe not like the mega wealthy, but I saw a wide range of people and how they lived and how it made a difference in their lives. And so as I started my financial planning career 15 years ago with Mustard Seed, I've spoken to hundreds of people over that time period. And I kind of did some quick math. It's not very accurate probably, but I figured that I've probably talked to 20 to 25 people per one client that I have now, something like that. And so the ratio is very off, like 95. So basically 95% of the time when I talk to somebody, they're not going to become a client, which is fine. Because most people don't need a financial advisor yet, but they still have a lot of questions. And I've always loved teaching. I've always loved having good, productive, good faith conversations, and that hopefully happens when I talk to people about politics or religion or financial issues or whatever I'm talking to people about. That's always my goal, is to have a good, productive, good faith conversation with people. And so as I've had time to talk with people over the years, I know what questions they're going to ask about financial stuff. And so I thought, instead of saying it 10,000 times to 10,000 different people and spending 10,000 hours, maybe I would write a book and spend about 250 hours writing all these thoughts down, and then they would have something that they could refer back to look at and to refer back to the ideas and topics that I cover. And so that's why I wrote CFO Dad. Now, I started this book. I've been thinking about writing a book for a long time, and so the ideas have been swirling, but I didn't actually start writing the book until last year. But when the pandemic hit, I was really close to being done with the first draft of it when the pandemic hit. But when the pandemic hit, I thought, you know what, I need to get this out. So people, maybe not very many people, but whoever has a chance to read something like this, maybe it will give them something to do, you know, while they're in between jobs or not working or on, you know, in quarantine or whatever. I just wanted to give people something that they could do. And so I hit the gas and I got it published at the end of March. And so I planned to get it published probably around May or June, something like that, but I just kind of went a little bit faster than I'd planned on. You can read it in about an hour, and it's basically broken up into 3 different parts. I don't have those clearly delineated, but you can tell just by looking at the chapters and at the topics that are covered. And so the first part of the book is chapters 1 through 3. And in those chapters, I try to get people excited about saving money, about building wealth. And so it's just kind of getting people's minds right about, okay, what am I doing here? Is it possible for me to build wealth? A lot of people think it's impossible, but it's not. And I try to get people excited about the prospects, the potential that they may have for saving money, for building a nest egg, for having a comfortable retirement, and that it's still possible, even though the world is crazy. But systematic savings over time can add up to real world wealth, and it can make a huge difference in your life down the road. Okay, and so that's what I do in the first 3 chapters, just to kind of get people excited about saving money, giving them a pep talk. Okay, you can do this. This is something that you can do. And then in chapters 4 to 10, I cover some different topics in investing, from just a lot of things like diversification, asset location, which I know most y'all probably don't know what that means, but diversification is simple. You don't want to keep all your eggs in one basket. And the types of accounts you might want to use if you have an employer plan, types of plans you want to implement if you have a small business. So I try to hit a really wide array of people that could be affected, that could be helped by these different topics. I talk about health savings accounts and how great those are. I talk about 529 accounts for people that are saving for college. There's all kinds of different topics that I cover in this, just about basic investing principles and strategies and tactics that you can use. In chapter 9, so I follow that up with, because I feel like, the way I wrote this book, I'm writing it to a younger guy normally, because it's CFO Dad, and I'm, hopefully the prototypical CFO Dad. That doesn't mean I always live up to that at all, but I'm writing it to somebody who might be in a situation I was in when I was 24, 25 years old. Is kind of how I decided to write the book. In chapter 9, I give people a pep talk about downswings in the market. Now, I did this before March. Okay, I didn't know how practical that was going to be. Of course, the downswing had already occurred by the time the book went out, but I wrote all the chapter. The chapter was written. I did go back and change it a little bit there at the very end, just to say that the pandemic's happening and we don't know what all's going to happen. But regardless of all that, downswings happen. Expect them. And, be okay with that, because in the long run, markets work. The markets will reward efficient companies that produce value, and therefore you can be pretty sure that over the long run, the values of these companies that do well will increase over time. And so, then that's chapter 9. Chapter 10 is one that is very interesting. It's one of my little pet topics that I like to talk about because I think it's so fascinating. I love to think about, teach about money itself. What is money? It's a economic unit of measurement in financial terms. It's a medium of exchange. It's a store of value. It's a unit of account. It's all these different things. What makes good money? And I think that Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, things like that can and already has revolutionized the world in terms of our thinking about what money actually is. And so I talk about, in chapter 10, cryptocurrencies and stuff like that. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'd be glad to talk about that. Kind of a hot topic nowadays, especially with the Fed printing trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars and devaluing the dollars in your pocket. And so I talk about that, and I give you kind of a framework for how, if you were going to invest in something that's very speculative, how that might fit into an overall portfolio. And by the way, none of this is financial advice. So, don't act on anything I say. I am a financial advisor, but this is not financial advice because that's all personal and, it may not apply to everybody here. So anything I say is just going to be my opinion. And so I wrap up with, in the third part of the book, just some additional teachings on charitable gifting, some strategies that you can use, some ways to train your children in financial awareness. So I give some stories about how I've worked with my kids, particularly, to help them understand financial things. And then the very last chapter, I write about how to choose a financial advisor. And so again, the reason I wrote this book was I talked to, dozens and dozens of people. Only a very few of them do I actually take on as a client because it doesn't make sense. But for those people that don't end up being clients, this is for them, right? So you've got the people that are, kind of going up through the ranks, establishing their career. They got their 401k. They're starting to save money, or maybe they haven't started to save money. Well, what can a financial advisor do for them? Well, I mean, they can do a lot if they had time, but normally if you're in that situation, it's hard to afford to pay somebody a couple $100s an hour to do coaching. But hey, if you buy a $10 book and you read it and it takes you about an hour, that's a pretty good use of your time, I think. And so it's kind of that's the point, the target I'm trying to hit with who would be helped by this book. And then hopefully after they read this book and they implement the principles in the book for 10 or 15 years, then maybe they will need a financial advisor. And so that's obviously the hope there, is that we will bring them along to a point to where they have a significant amount of wealth and they need, more professional advice on what to do with the money. The names of the chapters are all sayings from my grandfather, and I'm sure some of you may remember some of these. So I'll read some of the chapters here just to give you a little taste of what's in it. So the first chapter is called Sleeping the Sleep of the Saved and Thankful, Why Financial Planning Can Give You Peace of Mind. Chapter 2 is The Moral Justification for Profit, Why Equity Investing Actually Builds Wealth. The third one I think is my favorite chapter title. It's How to Scratch a Poor Man's Nose, which I incidentally had to censor that title a little bit. And I know there's some people over here that know what he actually said, but the fourth one is don't put all your eggs in one basket, but if you do, keep your eye on that basket. Was investment principles for the layman, so that's where I talk about diversification and asset location and stuff like that. The fifth chapter is when somebody helps you out of a ditch, don't complain about how they do it. How and why to take advantage of employer plans. Chapter 6 is running naked, strategies for the self-employed and small business owner. Chapter 7, in the catbird seat, the many magical benefits of health savings accounts. Chapter 8, giving it the old college try, college savings. Chapter 9 is the one where I help people work through the depression that logically follows from a market downswing. It's called Staring Out the Window, and there ain't nothing out there. How to deal with market downswings. And then chapter 10 is Shooting the Moon, Bitcoin, and crypto, hodl, FUD, and FOMO, which I know is probably Greek to most of you, but that's just some acronyms that people in the crypto space use to talk about different principles. Chapter 11, Pigs in the Mud, The Joy of Charitable Giving. And then the other two aren't his sayings, but that's kind of why I wrote the book, how I wrote the book, what's in the book. So if anybody has any questions or any comments, I'll be glad to field questions now. But thank y'all for having me. Any questions?
So we just make a donation to the
Oh, yes.
Foundation?
Yes. So I've got books here. I've already signed them. If you would like to get one of the books, feel free to pick one up. I've given all the proceeds for now to the SAU Foundation. And so if you want it, just grab how many ever you want, and just make a donation to the SAU Foundation.
Do you have a question? Okay.
Yeah. So, and they're available on Amazon, the books themselves, if you want more. They have them on the SAU Beyond the Campus shop. They're there, and those are signed as well. So, anyway, you can check me out on Facebook. I've got the CFO Dad channel. I regularly post videos up there. This is actually live streaming right now on the CFO Dad Facebook page. Got a YouTube channel. Got a lot of different stuff. I talk about all kinds of stuff. I go into more depth on all these topics on there. So if you have interest in those things, or if you know somebody that needs to be more interested in those things, point them my way. I'd be glad to try to help. So, yeah.
Jonathan, the area of cryptocurrency fascinates me.
Yeah.
Do you think is that going to be one unit, a universal unit across everywhere, or are there going to be a lot of different types of cryptocurrency?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are lots of debates about that. So you have lots of camps in the monetary policy universe. And so there are a lot of people that are gold bugs, and probably most of you have heard of people who would be considered gold bugs. Does anybody know why there are gold bugs? Why is that? Why is gold popular?
Because it's a physical object.
Okay.
That have intrinsic value.
Okay.
And have really since the start of humanity.
Yeah. For over 2,000 years, it's had a value. And it's, what else though? What makes it have that value? Rare, yes, scarcity, exactly, scarcity. So any kind of, what we have used historically as a means of exchange, a medium of exchange, has been things that have knowable scarcity, right? So like in South Arkansas, would it be good for us to use pine needles as currency? Would pine needles work? No, they wouldn't. Why? Because they're everywhere. Like they're just everywhere. And so they have no knowable scarcity, right? Gold, on the other hand, has knowable scarcity. We're pretty sure that there's not just a ton of it that's created every year. About 2 or 3% increase in the gold supply every year through the mining process. Okay. Now, and gold is a great medium of exchange because you can't manipulate it. It's not like the government could go print up a whole bunch of gold, right? There's as much of it out there as there is. And as far as we know, there's no huge mother lode of it out there that's going to, increase the supply by 2 or 3 times tomorrow. That could happen. What would happen if that did? What would happen if we found an amount of gold that's equal to the amount of gold that's out there right now? What would happen to the price? It'd probably about drop in half. So gold's around $1,800 an ounce, something like that. I haven't looked in the last few days. It got up to around $2,000 earlier, but it's between $1,500 and $1,800 an ounce. Well, if you doubled the supply of gold, I would expect that the price would just about half to about $750 to $1,000, somewhere in there. Well, Bitcoin, and I'll just talk about Bitcoin here. There are all kinds of cryptocurrencies. There's over 7,000 of them as of today. But Bitcoin it's kind of the proof of concept of cryptocurrency. And the proof of concept was that we thought wasn't possible was that you could have a scarce digital asset. Okay. So if I took a picture of this room of you guys and I sent it out to everybody, how many copies of the picture would there be? Well, as many of them as I send out to everybody. And then y'all can send it out to all your friends. And you could have literally millions of copies of this picture, digital asset, within a matter of a few minutes if we all tried really hard to replicate it as fast as possible. What Bitcoin did was it made it possible to have knowably scarce digital assets. Okay, and so the way they did it was really interesting. It's kind of like if we were all playing a Monopoly game, and if we were all playing Monopoly together, everybody would see who has what. You could look at everybody's account in front of them. It would be the money in front of them. And if anybody makes a transaction, it all happens in public, right? Everybody can see. If Rex, I owe you $50 for rent, they see the $50 come out of my account, go into Rex's account, okay? Bitcoin operates that same way, but at the digital level. So every account, everybody knows how much is in every account. And anytime a transaction happens, it happens publicly. So anytime a transaction happens between my account and somebody else's account, the whole network can see it. And so there's also what's called a block reward, which means that a certain amount of currency is created every day to help the network run. And people that run the network get rewarded with these block rewards. And so that's what makes there be a economic incentive to make the network work as a currency. Which I know this gets really deep really fast, but basically to answer your question, the reason that Bitcoin could be that, I'm not saying it will be, but the reason that Bitcoin could be the world reserve currency is because we know for sure that there will only ever be 21 million of them in existence. Unlike any other asset that's ever existed in the history of the world. So it has perfectly knowable scarcity, and that's why it can be a world reserve currency, possibly. So what are the chances of that happening? I don't know, but if it happens, it could be worth, well, it's already worth 200 billion as a network. So the market capitalization of all the Bitcoins out there is 200 billion. The market capitalization of gold is 8 trillion or 12 trillion, somewhere in there, just to give you an example. Now, that doesn't mean that I think Bitcoin's going to do that. I don't know. I think it's possible. But more than that, I think the point is Bitcoin can't be manipulated. So you can't have bad actors come in and inflate the monetary supply. Governments can't affect it. The miners themselves can't affect it. And it's not just a ledger system of keeping up with accounts. It's also its own monetary system, so you can transfer value between each other. And all you have to do is keep your password safe, and nobody else has your password. And so there's no Bitcoin company that can take all your Bitcoin. So like with PayPal, if I send you money through PayPal, the PayPal company has access to both mine and your account, and they could freeze our money if they wanted to. That can't happen on the Bitcoin network because it's a decentralized, censorship-resistant currency. That was a long answer, but
Everybody get that?
Just wanted to break in here real quick. I realized as I was editing this video that I didn't really answer Rex's question, so I'm going to answer it now. His question was, will there only be one cryptocurrency? The answer is, I don't know, but I do think that it's more likely that there will be multiple cryptocurrencies that fulfill different niches within the financial economy. And so I think Bitcoin may serve kind of as a reserve currency, so it may not be transacted to, like, it's possible that you won't use Bitcoin to buy coffee. It'll just be kind of your long-term savings that you put it there, and it kind of sits there and just is the basis for value in other projects even. So it's possible that you would have Bitcoin be kind of the reserve, and it kind of backs up everything else. And you may have other cryptocurrencies that are used for other uses, for like your daily transactional cryptocurrency. You may have something like, there's lots of projects out there like Bitcoin Cash, Dash, Litecoin. There's lots of other cryptocurrencies out there that fulfill different niches within the community. And so I think it probably would be foolish to say that there's only going to be one. There will be multiple ones, but they will probably fulfill different niches within the overall crypto economy. And more than that, there's all kinds of different use cases, such as like smart contract operations and digitizing assets that you put on the blockchain. So there's all kinds of different niches out there that could be fulfilled, and ones that we haven't even thought about yet. And so basically, I believe that in a beautiful field, 1,000 blossoms will bloom, and there will probably be multiple cryptocurrencies that fulfill multiple different niches, some that we know about, some that we don't know about. So thanks for the question, and sorry I didn't answer it in full there.
Next book's gonna be on that.
yeah. But chapter 10 talks a little bit more about it. But it's a great question. It's a fascinating topic, and I love talking about it because it's very fascinating. And there's some political implications for it, of course. But it's really a great. I think it can be a great tool for freedom in the future. So.
When the price is so high,
Yeah.
I mean, gold, you can buy incremental pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How's the average person ever going to be able to access when the price is already as high
Sure.
as it is now?
Yeah, great question. So just like with gold, except way more so, Bitcoin you can break down into individual units as much as 1/100,000,000th of a Bitcoin, which is called a Satoshi. So you could buy $10 worth of Bitcoin, you could buy $5 worth of Bitcoin, you could buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, or 10,000 is the price. The price is about 10,800 right now. So yeah, you can buy as much or as little as you want of it. So it's perfectly divisible, which is another one of the things that you would want your money to be: divisible. You want it to be divisible, you want it to be portable, you want it to be scarce, and you want it to be nobly scarce, that is, and you want it to be a good unit of account, and so that you know exactly who owns what. Yes, sir.
Could you elaborate what would happen during the election, whoever wins with the stock market?
Yes, I can elaborate on that. So the answer is I don't know, but historically, with either Republican or Democrat presidents, the returns of the stock market in the long run in aggregate have been about the same. So there's no real difference between returns that you would expect under a Republican versus returns you would expect under a Democrat in general. Now, that doesn't mean that that will always be the case. But here's what I do know, and I think that gives me hope that the market will be resilient. Like I said earlier, the market has a way of rewarding efficiency and value. And so if you're a company that can produce value and can produce a good or a service that everybody wants, where's all the value going to go? It's going to go to that company. And markets have a really good way of ferreting out winners and losers. And there's always going to be winners and there's always going to be losers. And as the government prints more and more money, which I think is a bipartisan issue at this moment. Both parties don't mind at all printing a whole bunch of money. As long as that's the case, and I have no reason to believe that it won't be the case, I think markets are pretty safe in terms of being able to attract that value in terms of dollars. So Biden, Trump, either way, I think markets still have the ability to create value, create wealth, and to attract that value in terms of dollars.
And don't you think that the extreme dip or the ups and downs that we are going to have before the election that everybody knows, don't you think that's just more of an emotional thing?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. There's tons of emotions that go into, the prices from day to day. I think it's better if you just take a longer term look at it. And if you look at 10, 20, 30-year periods, there just aren't very many of those type periods where stocks, will delineate from mean returns for any extended period of time. And so look at any 30 or 40-year period in history, and the return of equities or stocks is going to be somewhere around 10%. No matter what 30-year period you look at, they're all going to revert back to the mean over time. And so now, of course, if you're 90, your time horizon is not 30 or 40 years, and so that would inform you on how you ought to invest, of course. And so it doesn't mean that just because I think markets are going to be okay either way, it doesn't mean that there won't be short-term disruptions, short-term falls in the market. There certainly will be. But that's your risk tolerance and how you can, appropriately weight your portfolio. And, depending on your time horizon and your willingness to take risk and ability to take risk, that will determine how you should invest.
What's the biggest mistake you see young people make, and what's the biggest mistake you see older people make in regard to their idea of saving or retirement planning?
Younger people for sure just not saving systematically. Systematic savings is the key. If you can just start getting them to put back $50, $100 a month or whatever it is, if they have to start at $10 a month, whatever it takes, just start saving the money and invest it. With older people, really in general, the biggest mistake I see them make is they think they want to be safe, and so they put all their money in cash or fixed income. And I understand the sentiment there, but if you put all your money, again, I'm going to refer back to it again, if you put all your money in fixed income or cash, we know with 100% certainty that is going to go down in value because the government is going to print more money and they're going to devalue it. And so the only way, or one of the only ways that you can insulate yourself from that risk is by having exposure to equities, exposure to stocks. Because you can't, while they can print dollars, they can't go print Apple computer companies or Apple or Amazon's or Google's, okay? So those companies have scarcity, right? And they create goods and services that are scarce. And so those things that are good are going to, attract that value. And so that's the one I see the most probably with the older crowd is that they're unwilling to put their money in assets that they deem to be risky while swallowing whole hog inflation risk or purchasing power risk. But that's a great question because we see that a lot. All right.
Thank you,
y'all.
Jonathan.